Today I'm going to cover three subjects: oil shortages, the technology war between the US and China, and food shortages. Hi, I'm Ben Reppond. Welcome to my YouTube broadcast. Today is September 12th, 2023. First of all, I want to say this. I want to say thank you to all of those that watch and those that comment. I get a lot of viewers, of which I'm appreciative. And I love it when people comment. Most people are very complimentary and very kind. And I want to say thank you to all of those. And I try to say thank you online to most of them. And thank you for doing that. And continue to make comments. I love that. And if it calls for a response, I will try to give you a response. Also want to let you know that I'm going to do something that I've never done before. This coming Friday, September 15th at 10 o'clock Mountain Time, I'm Mountain Time, so that would be noon Eastern, 9 o'clock Pacific, and 11 o'clock Central. So if you're watching, I'm going to have a live session, and I will answer your questions if you have them. Come on, ask them, and we'll go as long as there are questions. So thank you for that. You'll be getting a notice on it. If you're a subscriber, you'll be getting a notice. And so hopefully, we get good participation, and I look forward to doing things unrehearsed. So, and we'll see how that goes, and if it goes well, we'll do it again. So there are three subjects I want to cover. As I said, oil shortages is one. So I've been reading about this, and I'm going to play a couple of clips for you. That what's going on is, and you know this by looking at when you buy gasoline at the service station, you know that prices have gone up. Where I am, they're in between $4 and $5, and of course I'm buying diesel, so it's $4.60, $4.70, whatever. And then so prices are up. What's going on? And the price of oil is up around $90 a barrel. What's going on is things are happening. The U.S. has shut down its oil production and the refining process. I think that went to zero or close to zero during the new administration. Then you've got issues with Russia and Saudi Arabia. They have diminished production because prices were going down, and to drive prices back up, they cut production. So these clips are going to deal with that issue on oil shortages. The implication of this is that prices are going to go up because they're going to constrict production, and this is not going to be good for the economy. It's probably ultimately not good for the stock market. And I'm going to cover food shortages later. It's not good for food shortages or for food because they rely on transportation, and that's heavily oriented to energy and fuel. So I want to begin with this first piece. This is Lena Petrova. She is a YouTuber. She is not official big-time CNBC person. I think she's very credible. She presents information that shows where we are, what's happened, and kind of where this is going. But that was a very good presentation, so I'll play this for you. Take a listen to Lena Petrova.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. Several days ago, I uploaded a video about new extended oil output cuts that were announced by Saudi Arabia. The cuts were in addition to OPEC Plus cutting its production as well through the end of next year, through the end of 2024. In that video, I explained that back in 2015, Congress effectively authorized sales of crude oil from the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So as the result of that, during these past 8 years, there were multiple drawdowns that slowly but surely resulted in the United States literally depleting its strategic reserve. I won't repeat myself now, but there's much more information on this in the article that I wrote on Substack, as well as in a separate video here on my channel. I will link that too. On my Substack, I shared the names of the bills that were passed by Congress in case you want to look it up. Well, as we speak, there are only days left of supply in the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve. To be exact, our country has 46 days worth of crude oil supply in its reserves. And here's proof. The report was published by Bank of America. As you can see here, American oil reserves just hit record lows, while oil prices hit record highs. If this doesn't scare you, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. The United States oil reserves literally collapsed. The reserve is at the lowest level in 41 years since 1982. As global oil producers led by Saudi Arabia and Russia are extending their production cuts, the US, with its vast natural resources and capability to provide its own energy resources, its own oil, the United States is now literally out of oil. According to a recent report published by the International Energy Agency, global oil demand is expected to continue to rise, which naturally will push oil prices even higher.
So to give you a different perspective, it's just a different perspective. I don't think it's necessarily opposite. Becky Quick from CNBC interviews Halima Croft from RBC, and she's giving kind of the geopolitical aspect of what's going on with oil and energy. So take a listen to Becky Quick and Halima Croft.
Joining us right now is Halima Croft, RBC Capital Markets Managing Director and Global Head of Commodity Strategy, also a CNBC contributor. And Halima, we've been watching these oil prices picking up. We know it's because of the extended cuts Saudi Arabia's made. Is there any chance that they're going to rethink things, or is this just what makes sense for Saudi Arabia?
I mean, the Saudis have been very clear since June when they did the unilateral million barrel a day cut. They were going to be very focused on trying to stave off all these macro concerns about China, hard landing, recession, that were dragging oil prices down. And so what we saw this week was the Saudis were like, look, we're going to extend this million barrel a day unilateral cut through end of December alongside the 2 million barrel a day OPEC cut. Now, what is also driving prices higher, though, we've had massive inventory draws. Look at the draw we had last week in the United States. Demand has held up stronger than anticipated. The sum of all fears on the macro front is abating right now when it comes to when we look at the fundamental outlook for oil.
So we had thought that oil prices were going to be higher. We've kind of dodged that bullet. It's been the one area where inflation hasn't been really rampant. Are you thinking that we are in for higher prices for an extended period of time?
I mean, the challenge for the Biden administration right now is they do not have up their sleeve probably another blockbuster SPR release. And so they are having to rely on energy diplomacy. And you mentioned the G20. The question is, can President Biden try to secure additional oil relief from the Saudis as part of this mega deal that has been in the works? Negotiations have been ongoing for several months about a deal that would include Israel normalization, assistance for the Saudi civilian nuclear program, new security guarantees for Saudi Arabia. Can they get this mega deal across the finish line? And would it include some form of oil relief?
So another thing that happened this past week that's going on right now is that in a couple of days last week, Apple stock went down and changed the valuation of Apple by $200 billion. Now, that's not a lot when you think of, the valuation of Apple stock, but it's still a lot. It's still $200 billion. And what happened was that there is what's going on is a technology war between the U.S. and China. And so China apparently No official statements from the state government yet, but apparently has banned the use of U.S. devices, particularly iPhones, by government employees. And so, very interesting. The concern is not that those devices are banned by government workers, but that it will expand and it will go into a broader banning of U.S. technology products for Chinese consumers. So anyway, this is going on, and it's and Apple stock has come down. It's not crashing, but it's come down a couple of $100 billion. And but the reason that's significant is that Apple has been kind of the darling of stocks. So people like that. It's been very consistent, outperforming other technology stocks. I'm not a stock person. I relate more to indexes, but I'm playing this because I think it's relevant, and Apple is obviously a huge company, and the Chinese market is a big deal to Apple. So take a listen to this one, and then I'm going to play another point of view after this.
Let's hit Apple now, because it is the stock story of the day and what's pressuring the NASDAQ. Reports China's banning the use of iPhones by government officials, a ban that some warn could grow beyond government officials. Eunice Yoon has more from Beijing. Eunice, what can you tell us about this?
Well, Sarah, it's really unclear just how expansive this directive is. The government hasn't confirmed it, and neither has Apple. But what we are hearing is more and more reports of state agencies as well as state firms asking their employees not to bring their iPhones to work on national security grounds. The focus has been on those who are in investment, trade, and international affairs, and the employees have about a month to make a switch. Now, the question here isn't so much about how many iPhone sales this would impact when it comes to the government, but it actually is bringing up a question as to just how politically correct Apple iPhones will be in broader society. We spoke to some distributors of iPhones. They said that Apple's bigger problem might actually be something totally different, which is Huawei's new Mate 60 Pro. This phone was released when U.S. Commerce Secretary Raimondo was in town. The company hasn't released the specs, but it's operating as if it's as fast as a 5G phone. So most of the folks in the tech industry who I've been talking to here don't actually believe that Huawei would be able to produce this phone without foreign technology. However, state media has been touting this as a poke in the eye for the U.S. Commerce Secretary and the department's export curbs. In fact, CCTV posted a social media post and which is mocking her as a Huawei ambassador. What was also interesting, and these are actually phone covers which have been on Taobao now with Raimondo's face, but there's actually a counter argument now within the public, and that is that people are quoting what one of Huawei's executives said, that we are far ahead, that we are getting far ahead. And his intention was to say that Huawei is getting ahead of the U.S. export curbs, but what people are kind of seeing that as a joke, that Huawei wouldn't really be able to do that. So that's the discussion right now here.
Now I'm going to play another piece, a short piece, from where Brian Sullivan from CNBC is interviewing David Sachs. He's a venture capitalist, and he talks about both sides of this, both from the Chinese perspective and the U.S. perspective. I thought that was very interesting. So you can see what is going on in this technology war. It's not a trade war, it's a technology war. And I won't preempt this, and I'll let David Sachs speak for himself. So take a listen to this.
Let's ask famed tech investor and serial entrepreneur David Sachs. He's the co-founder and partner of Craft Ventures, a venture capital firm that has invested in Uber, Airbnb, Twitter, and many others. He's also launching a new venture called SaaS Grid this week. We're going to get to that in just a moment. David, thank you very much for joining us. Listen, this seems to be, you're going to do this, I'm going to do that. what do you make of this escalating, for now, technology war between America and China?
Well, I think you're right, Brian, that this is basically a game of tit for tat. Previously, the United States banned the exporting of high-end chips to China, as well as the machines that could make them, and banned the types of consultants and expertise who could help China make those chips themselves. We have basically banned Huawei and other companies from participating in our marketplaces and our telecom networks. And our own government workers, many of them have TikTok banned from their phones, from their government issued phones. So we have taken steps like the one China is taking ourselves, and I would argue that we've taken actually much more dramatic steps. By comparison, the step that China just took to ban its government workers from using Apple phones, it seems like a relatively mild response compared to the steps we've taken. If China were to do something like ban Apple from participating in its market altogether, that would be a much more serious step. But as far as we know, that hasn't happened. It's not happening.
Agreed on all. And in fact, to your point, I mean, Huawei was banned in the U.S. and Canada years ago. You remember a Huawei executive, I think it was the chief financial officer, she was arrested in Canada. TikTok, to your point, banned on U.S. government devices in some states now as well. It won't be a popular question in the Beltway, but it might be in Beijing. I'll take the other side. Can you blame China for doing this?
I mean, not really. I mean, we wouldn't want our government workers using Chinese devices, would we? I mean, we basically assume that if our workers are using TikTok or using a Huawei device, then it's just Chinese spyware. I don't know whether it is or isn't, but that's our belief. So I don't know why the Chinese government wouldn't have a similar belief about phones manufactured by a U.S. company. So to me, this is just part of tit for tat. I think that the actions of both sides are understandable, but I think, we could, be spared the outrage that's taking place here, because like I said, they're just doing what we've already done.
Now, I saw an article this week that caught my attention. You know that the U.S. has about $32 trillion of debt. And you know that interest rates have gone up for the U.S. consumer, but the U.S. government also pays interest rates, whatever the interest rates are. As they've been low, the U.S. government and consumers have benefited by low interest rates. Now they have become more elevated, so that is making worse the scenario for debt. Now, we think of 32 trillion, so it went from, 10 to 20 to 25, 30, 32. Okay, it's going to 33 pretty soon. So we kind of become numb to that. But when I saw this piece, I thought it was really interesting. So daily, we are going into debt $5 billion a day. Wow. When I backed this out and did the calculation, I found that we're just as bad as this number. The interest on the 32 trillion is about $2 billion a day of interest. That $2 billion you and I are paying, our government is paying, but that's us, $2 billion a day in interest. That doesn't buy you any goods and services. That's just paying the interest. Part of that is because the deficit has raised the debt to where it is, and part of it is a higher rate of interest. And so this is going to accelerate because of those two factors. The debt is going to accelerate. The reason I cover this, and you may think, okay, well, what does this have to do with me, Mr. or Ms. Average Consumer? Well, the problem is that we as a country, when we have that much debt, it eventually will collapse our country. It is not just the United States, it's all countries. So virtually all countries. I think out of the nearly 200 countries, I think there's 5 obscure countries that I haven't heard of or barely heard of that don't have debt, but the rest have. And what happened is that the politicians during this period from, I don't know, the last 10 or 12 years of low interest rates have piled on debt. They've doled out goodies out of their goodie bag for political favor, and they've all done it. It's just not just a U.S. problem. And so when you think of the U.S. as paying $2 billion a day in interest and going into debt, including the interest, $5 billion. We have no plan to pay back a penny, ever. I just don't see that happening. There is no plan. No politician is signing on for that. And I don't know of any politician that's running for office on reducing or eliminating the debt. They may believe that, I don't know. But I mean, this is not good for us as a country. And what can you do about it? Just realize that the stock market is going up, real estate values have gone up. Yes, they're softening now a little bit, but this is not going to go to the moon. There is a crash in front of us. I don't think it's today. I think the crash is probably out a year or two, maybe 3. Nobody knows that. So, but I think you just need to think in terms of, when I'm that far out, if you're in a buy and hold investment portfolio, all I would say is look out, get prepared, because however you want to do that, you want to shift strategies, you want to shift assets, you want to just kind of get your mind around the idea that your money is going to go down a lot. I don't know how you deal with it, but the reality is that we've been about 13, 14, 15 years since the last crash. We're overdue for not just a correction, but a crash. And so this is just a heads up, and this article reminded me of that. Now I want to go into a final topic, and this is food shortages. I've begun to read more and more about food shortages. Now, when we think of oil and energy, we think the first thing comes into my mind is transportation. So food going from the farm to the processing plant, probably to the wholesaler, to the retailer, and then you to your home. So there's several steps in that process. Every one of them involves fuel and energy, and that comes from oil. On the farm, the farms, they are all run by diesel equipment. So, but that is fuel and comes from oil. So I'm reading a lot, and I don't want to quote all of the sources, but I'm going to play a clip for you. But it is interesting to me how much this is happening. What you can do is that, and I want you to think about this, what you can do is that you can focus on how do you provide for yourself with food. Now, if you live in the city, most people do. I don't, but a lot of people do. If you live in the city, then you have some options. They're limited. So you could do, food share arrangements, but at a minimum, what you have available to you are local farmers, and they establish farmers markets in every city. And there are many of them. I can think of, I'm in the Flathead Valley, I can think of several here in the Flathead Valley every week that the local farmers sell their produce. So even though there's food shortages, you can provide for yourself. My recommendation, because of what I'm reading, is that if you don't have a food supply, that you establish a relationship with local farmers or go to farmers markets and understand how that works so that you can begin to rely on that if you had to. And of course, you can put up food by canning it or freezing it, and whatever your method is. But if we have severe food shortages, people need to be able to provide for themselves. And so I want to play this clip. This is a good piece talking about what this potentially means and what's going on right now. There's a lot of information. If you just type in your search engine, like on YouTube or even on your regular search engine, you type in food shortages, you'll get a lot of material. So I'm just trying to provide something and give you a heads up for thinking about how do you survive and live during a period where there's food shortages.
Geopolitical strife, conflicts, food supply lines breaking down, warnings from all kinds of governmental entities, NGOs, and the UN are predicting widespread food shortages. How much stock do people place in this potentiality? It seems to us that it's already started. Food prices in the US soared to record heights last year. Global food prices also posted a 20.7% increase compared to last year. Highest prices we've seen since probably for the last 10 years. The chief of the UN World Food Program warned that a potential global food crisis might be on the horizon on a scale not seen since World War II. Stocking up on the non-perishables your family uses regularly is not a bad idea. An extra bottle of shampoo, an extra box of cereal when you need just one, or an extra pound of ground beef for the freezer isn't going to stretch your budget much. Your kids might thank you for stocking some extra boxes of their favorite snacks. Long-term storage food items are still very affordable. Purchasing buckets and putting several pounds of rice, beans, and noodles into storage will make you good for months. Canned goods to complement them, like tomatoes and meat, are also affordable and easy to stock up on. Some items like powdered eggs or freeze-dried meals are expensive now because of numerous factors including inflation, and not because they are more expensive to produce. If you live on a piece of property, invest in seeds. You would be surprised how much of your family's diet you can subsidize in your front yard. It's an absolute necessity to teach people about self-sufficiency and homesteading as global production halts. Even though the numbers are small, more and more people are buying small flocks of hens or planting a couple of tomato plants and bean plants. Gardening is work, and it takes an investment, but you don't need all the high-end fertilizers and special treatments. Decent plant fertilizer will take care of most of your nutrient needs, and it doesn't take much room to grow a very basic variety of things that can start really cutting chunks out of your grocery budget and be a fail-safe in the event of a supply chain breakdown. The knock-on effect of other countries experiencing severe food shortages is increased political instability and increased migration. Coupled with increased food prices leading to further food insecurity in the U.S., political turmoil of some level is likely.
Okay, thank you for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. And if you have questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. And again, I want to remind you that this coming Friday at 10 o'clock Mountain Time, 9 Pacific, 11 Central, and noon Eastern, that we will be having a live session, and look forward to interacting with you on that session. Thank you.